correct me if I'm wrong, I think I've heard you say we've just bighorn sheep on record in that area there, size-wise. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They even had the world record for a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's for a number of reasons. One, we're in the Chinook zone, like in the Hinton area.
Welcome to the Wilderness Wavelength Podcast.
This is it, another episode of the Wilderness Wavelength Podcast. Welcome to it. My name is George. Excited to have you guys on the show this episode. One of our favorites, Scott Sunderwald.
Oh, thanks. Good to be back.
And Scott, I'll let you introduce our guest for this week.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have Beth MacCallum here tonight. So that's wonderful. I've known Beth for roughly 20 years.
Wow.
Time flies when you're having fun. And Beth is a very well-respected wildlife biologist in the area. I think probably mostly known for being an expert on bighorn sheep, but she's known for a lot of things in the area. She has a company called Bighorn Wildlife Technologies. And years ago, we worked together on projects like the inception of the Beaver Boardwalk, this 3-kilometer boardwalk in Hinton. A naturalist club called the Whiskey Jack Club got started. Beth has been the president for many years of that. We've done harlequin duck surveys together that Beth has organized, owl prowl. Beth does a lot of environmental reclamation work. And every year we do citizen science butterfly counts, which is great fun. We get up in the Alpine with any volunteers that want to join us, and we catch wild and wonderful butterflies. And Beth has a really great knowledge of both butterflies and birds as well. And I'm probably shortchanging you on a lot of stuff, Beth, but there's a lot there.
Welcome to the show, Beth.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Scott. I've known Scott a long time, and it's been great. We've had a lot of common interests, and I've known George not that long, but it's been great.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm pleased to be here.
Beth through like the Beaver Boardwalk kind of committee there, and like just Beth's passionate about, like, I'm happy to have you on because we're going to talk about some of these things Scott was talking about. What got you into becoming a biologist?
I guess when I was a kid, I was always outside. It was sort of rural Ontario, and we were always hiking out to that forest to see the flowers in the spring, or wading in the ponds and getting leeches all over us. And my poor mom, she said as long as we had all our fingers and toes when we came in, she wouldn't ask what we were doing. And then I went to university and took science, and actually that was Queens, and they had a field station with Carleton and Queens on Lake Opinicon, and they had, if you took one week of field course, you get a quarter credit. So it was amazing. I took all kinds of cool stuff there. And when I graduated, there were no jobs that came out west, and started working just for a short period of time in Canadian Wildlife Service in Edmonton, and then Fish and Wildlife for a number of years after that, and it was great. But I wanted to do something different, so I went consulting. And about that time, my husband had an opportunity to move to Hinton for his work, and we thought, let's try that. And we've sort of we ended up staying, and I ended up doing a master's on bighorn sheep, and under Dr. Valerius Geist at University of Calgary.
Cool.
And actually my thesis was how to reclaim an open pit coal mine to bighorn sheep habitat. And it started out just a population and a habitat study, but then I realized that what wasn't happening is what wasn't being put together is why the sheep were really on the mine. They had colonized by themselves. Everybody thought they were there because of the good forage and whatnot, but sheep need they're built as sprinters, so they need escape terrain. So they detect predators visually, so their anti-predator strategy is visual detection. That's why those big eyes. And then they sprint to escape terrain, which is difficult for predators to negotiate. So that's cliffs or cliff-like walls. And on the mines, of course, it was the high walls and footwalls. And then once they started reclaiming, you needed the combination. You can have lots of cliffs, but no sheep. You can have lots of forage, but no sheep, but you need them together.
Right.
Yeah, so that I put a third chapter in my thesis of all the criteria. This is how you do this.
Yeah.
And it was sort of fun. You can take a wrecky old coal mine and make something of value.
I love it. Well, I mean, around here, that's happening. Like, it seems like there's quite a cycle going on with the coal mines. And my dad worked at Coal Valley for 30 some years. He was a heavy equipment operator out there. So we had a chance to go out there, and he's like, oh, they reclaimed to build a lake here and stuff. So like, it's cool to see them, like, you know, returning things back to nature. Is that what makes up most of your days now, is like doing that kind of stuff with the mines, or?
Yeah, I do monitoring and do get involved in reclamation and impact assessment sometimes. So not like in various different mines.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the wildlife work now. The mines that I did my thesis on are subalpine, so they're not in the forest management area. Like the end land use can be wildlife habitat after watershed, of course, but the timber is not commercial. So those big old mines just south of Hinton are high, and so you could actually have the opportunity to design specifically for wildlife, not just for. We've got massive marmot colonies, and for elk and grizzly bear, the highest densities of grizzly bears between the North Saskatchewan and the Athabasca are right there on the mines.
Yeah. We were talking to Monty at the end of I don't know if this was even part of the recording. This might have been sitting around after, about how many grizzlies there are like through the mine area. Is that something you come across? Like a lot of grizzlies?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're on foot a lot. Our surveys are driving, walking, viewing, and we're on foot a lot.
Yeah.
And we do have a healthy respect for grizzly bears. We carry no firearms because they're not allowed on a mineral service lease on the mines. So we learn to respect the bears.
Yeah.
And be aware of them. And, actually we carry bear spray all year round because there's worse things than bears out there, actually. Yeah.
Well, you've got that great bear encounter where you got really close. Why don't you dive into that there and heard a bear growl at very close quarters?
Yeah. Okay. This is. This was on a different. It was a coal mine. It was a different mine, and I had a series of wildlife cameras, and we also were doing early morning bird surveys. And so this was, and we were doing plots, actually. We were doing not just plots, but we were actually mapping territory. So we had like 2 hectares all gridded out every 25 meters. We had it all mapped out. So we were mapping everything as we're going, and we would do multiple surveys for the birds through the breeding season. And I just walked down one whole line and crossed a creek, and where one of my cameras was, and that was the very end of my plot. So I stopped to download the SD card in the camera, and the grass had grown up, so I was stopped to clip it. We always have clippers to make sure, otherwise it blows and you just keep triggering the camera. And unusually, I took off my hard hat. I took off, I have always a stick and a backpack and a hard hat and a vest. So I took off my vest and my hat, and I was, on my hands and knees clipping all the grass and the vegetation that had grown up. And I thought I heard a deer bark. So I just stopped and looked around, and no, and it was clipping again. And I thought I heard it again, and it's like, no, okay. And all of a sudden, it was actually a grizzly bear, and it had come out of the bench above and come right down the bench right across the creek from me. This was a huge male, threat charge, standing up, and it was a roar. It wasn't this was not a growl. It was like a physical force hitting you. I was just like, oh, I had never. It was just unreal. And then, in science fiction stories, a popular one is like time warps. Well, time just warped at that moment. Everything just became slow motion. This thing was standing up. He was enormous. We'd seen him on our cameras and been impressed by him. Now, he did have a fleeting thought. It's like, I'm not in my office looking at a picture. This is real. This is right in front of me. And so I started just very low, immediately just saying no, very low, and it was loud, but over and over again, like vocalizing. And then I slowly leaned over and got my vest and put my vest on.
Yeah.
I slowly leaned down and got my pack and put it on. I slowly leaned down and got my hard hat and put it on. I slowly leaned down and got my stick. Meanwhile, the bear was just roaring the whole time. Like I'd never heard anything like that. And I slowly started walking back and just keep on saying no, so he would see and hear me leave. And
so how close was he?
Probably 10 meters.
That's crazy.
It was.
Yeah. Did you have bear spray at the time?
I think I forgot it.
Oh, man.
Well, usually I have it on my pack.
I've only heard a grizzly roar once, and as you said, it's a force of nature. It's every bit as loud as a lion roar that I've heard in zoos, and it just shakes the ground, and your hair will stand up on end. It's the power behind that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't forget that.
No, and I had a crew doing another bird plot, and I radioed them, but they didn't have their radio on because we're doing birds, right, listening. And so then I texted them. That was an area where we had, cell coverage. And my text was just pathetic. It said, charged by grizzly, don't do plot 7, meet me at plot 9. and they didn't even have their cell phones on either, so they found me walking on a road, and I said, we're done today. We're out of here.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, but I thought I heard on the radio that I forget what they were talking about. It wasn't bear threat charges, but they were talking about similar instances where normally your brain filters out a lot of kind of useless triggers. Mm-hmm. But in situations like that, there is no filter. And so that's what makes it seem so slow, like that the time is just going, because that seemed like forever. Yeah. And it was all in slow motions, or at least that's what it felt like. So I don't know how that works, but apparently your brain just lets all of the triggers in, so it's like ready for a flight or fight response or something. Yeah. But
you ever had that sensation, George? Time standing still?
I feel like there's not like the fear one though, but just like when I think when you're in nature, you're just kind of like in the zone at a point. Just like it just feels like, oh, this is like nothing's happening, like time is standing still, but never like because of fear that I can think of. But I've never been roared at by a grizzly bear either, though. So
Wow.
When you got into becoming a biologist, do you feel like moving to Hinton was the best move for you?
Oh, it was a good move.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, I think it's just how everything happened. I ended up doing my master's on Bighorn sheep at the mine under Dr. Valerius Geist at University of Calgary. And he was just an amazing professor, like just really, truly inspiring, and one of those few people that could do science really well and also was an artist. Like he was one of these amazing men. So that was really fortunate for me. And then
what are you doing with the Bighorn sheep then?
Right. Well, they're part of when we're doing one of the mines. Like there's sheep on a couple of the mines. Well, 3 of them actually that we actually survey. So right now they're part of our surveys. These are 100% visual surveys. So we cover the whole area, either walking, driving, or viewing. And so right now we're just monitoring the sheep.
So we're talking like Cardinal River Mine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because every time we drive out there's always the sheep right on the road. So you guys are monitoring them, but like, are you keeping account of them?
Yeah, we do. We have, it's really fascinating actually, for years and years now, like since, I don't know if I should say how long.
Go for it.
Yeah. Well, actually, since the late 80s, actually. Mm-hmm. And so there's a continuous record of not just sheep, but elk, and we pick up all the carnivores. Everything is mapped. Everything is sexed and age and classified. And
so are you tagging these two then?
We did have a program at one point, a telemetry program where we did tag a lot of them. I think we had 12 rams and 7 ewes with collars, telemetry collars. And then we had about 60 animals tagged as well. And these are colonizing animals. So the habitat is brand new, but it's been it's been reclaimed immediately below the alpine. Like there's no coal in the alpine, that's all limestone up there.
Right.
But they started up in the high subalpine. So once they started reclaiming, that new habitat was immediately Jason occupied habitat. And that's one of the criteria for bighorn sheep to colonize an area, is you have empty habitat, adjacent occupied habitat, because they're thought to not colonize very well, because they're so traditional. There's a whole cultural exchange of where you go for the next season.
And just so our listeners know, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I've heard you say we've just bighorn sheep on record in that area there, size-wise. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They even had the world record for a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's for a number of reasons. One, we're in the Chinook zone, like in the Hinton area, and the area where these mines are. We get the winter Chinook, so that regularly it's a warm wind that comes over the Rockies and melts the snow regularly throughout the winter. So that makes it easier winter. So these animals don't spend as much energy pawing and digging and just surviving the winter. All of our ungulates are on negative energy budget in the winter. They're all, nothing they eat can keep weight on. They're just losing weight all winter, waiting for that new green grass, the high protein. So if you have an easier winter, you don't spend as much energy just digging through the snow.
Yeah.
So that's one reason. The other is this is a colonizing population. The new habitat is empty not only of bighorn sheep, but of everything. Like there, so you have the ewes, like there's no competition between themselves on the winter range. So the ewes have, they can have large lambs. They don't, because of there's no competition between them. There's unlimited forage in the winter. And so really bighorn sheep management is ewe management. Once the ewes start being crowded on the winter range, they'll go through a lot of different physical changes and behavioral changes, so they don't eat themselves out of house and home. It's not like a moose where you have a fire in the boreal forest and up comes new moose habitat. The alpine meadows are very limited and slowly change over time. So they're sort of like, you can think of sheep almost like an island species. They have certain areas which are useful for them in season to season. So if the ewes get crowded on their winter range, then they'll start having instead of first lamb at 3 years, they'll have first lamb at 4 years or first lamb at 5 years. They start delaying. They don't twin. They're not like deer or deer. They won't twin, or moose. Moose will twin too. They'll even get smaller.
Interesting. I remember 2 years ago, Beth, I heard a presentation where you were mentioning how the big rams are so much younger than many of the ewes, and I don't think many of our listeners would know that. You see bighorn sheep and you think they're all kind of in the same age class, but you can have a female that's 25 and a big male kind of maxes out at age 8 or 9, which is quite shocking, right? A different lifestyle between the males and the females. The males trying to get as big and bulky as they can, and I think you mentioned getting further and further from escape terrain to tap into those better foraging areas, which is risky for predation, right? So I thought that was really interesting. That's always stuck with me.
Yeah, it's to the ram's advantage to maximize their size. Like the ewe doesn't have to; she just optimizes. But it really is the larger rams that do most of the mating during the rut. So, and the ewe will select for the large ram because to her, large size means 1, he knows where good food is, and 2, he's evaded predators to get that big.
Right.
So, so he would be a good mate. So she selects for large rams if they're there. She doesn't, the young rams keep trying, but she's not interested in them at all. So the ram's strategy is to maximize size, and they do exactly that. They will go farther afield. Well, they're bigger too, so they can go farther afield from escape train to access highly nutritious forage, where the ewes have all the lambs and yearlings with them, so they never will trade security for forage. They will sort of outgraze the rams. They're not overgraze, but they can graze closer, and they don't need to maximize size like it is advantageous for the rams. So yeah, it is. They're almost like 2 different species. They really are. They have completely different strategies, and they're separate most of the year, except for during the rut. And then the rams come to the ewes.
And this explosive power, I think I was mentioning to you, Beth, I'd seen down towards Catamount a bunch of rams together in a bachelor herd there, and a pack of wolves surrounded them and came closer and closer and actually had them completely encircled. And I thought this was it, but the rams actually, it looked like popcorn from where I was sitting. They just bounced right over top of the wolf pack.
Wow.
And really in bouncing motion and escaped. And it just shows what explosive muscular power they have, right?
Yep, they're stocky, powerful animals. Yeah, sometimes you think, who made these up with these skinny legs and these huge bodies and these giant horns?
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing.
So are you guys controlling the population then by moving like rams off of the area?
What happened, like while the population is increasing, it can really go.
Yeah.
Like you can... when they were colonizing the Greg River mine, they were an ungulate with 1 young a year with the first young at 3 years can potentially increase. The population can increase 33% per year.
Yeah.
But theoretically, but the Greg River herd, when they were just colonizing, they were going along at 26% per year, increasing. So when you have a population like that, you can actually take the females from a population that not herd it.
Yeah.
And there was in the U.S. They had inadvertently years ago been grazing domestic sheep into bighorn sheep alpine ranges without understanding that the domestic sheep carry a bacterium which weaken sheep and cause them to die from pneumonia. So there's been a lot of effort over, the last 40 years or so to recover lost or diminished populations because of this bacterium, Mycoplasma pneumonia. And it's really like all it is you need nose-to-nose contact, one contact, and the bighorn sheep have no resistance to this, so you can lose 85% of your herd in 3 weeks. They're just gone. And so it's really terrible, actually. And
is that common in domestic sheep then?
Yeah, it is. It doesn't affect them. It's it's not. And so there's a lot of understanding more and more these of what to do about that. In Alberta right now, there is I think it's an exclusion zone on Crown land of 50 kilometers for domestic sheep and goats from any occupied sheep and goat range. And then anyone that has domestic sheep and goats within that sort of surveillance zone, there are programs for them to contact your vet for testing or even fencing.
Okay.
But the reality is separation and is really the best. Anyway, unfortunately in the U.S., a lot of, that was one of the biggest challenges for bighorn sheep. There is habitat loss and other reasons why the populations are down quite a bit from before European settlement. But usually they'll have quite, a complex sort of management plan to reintroduce sheep into areas that there once were. Like in the Dakotas, there used to be thousands of them, and right down to zero. And so at one point, usually they would have introductions. So this herd, because it was expanding and in really good health and good condition, it was the province identified it as a location for transplanting sheep to, and we've actually over the years, most of them are like the rams don't travel well, the big rams, so it's not, you're not touching the rams. It's the females and some young rams and lambs and yearlings. But they've been 350 sheep transported to 7 different U.S. states actually over the years. And
I got to help Beth on a couple of those the sheep rodeos with the nets coming down and wrestling them and hobbling them, and it was quite the ordeal. But
you
as
guys
you
don't
said,
just trank them?
No. Well, not the ones that I was involved with, maybe somewhere, but the rams, as you said, we had to let go all the big rams and only keep the so-called banana rams. I think one truck was loaded up with a couple young rams and 40 ewes, but
it's a party bus.
Party bus. There's some happy young rams, that's for sure.
Wow.
But back to what you mentioned about the pneumonia and the sheep and goats. We don't have a lot of sheep herds here per se in the Northern Rockies, but we do have more and more hunters who are interested in using goats as pack animals and llamas in the mountains. So they're sure-footed. They can follow you. They won't run home like horses, and they can climb any terrain. So I imagine that's the same sort of challenge, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's a challenge. They would be valuable animals, but we're fallible too. Animals escape, fences break. Yeah. Maybe samples aren't, sampled properly. So, we are very fortunate in the Northern Rockies in that agriculture is like 100 kilometers of trees before you get into proper agriculture. And so our sheep haven't been exposed to domestic sheep or goats, but we have to really be conscious and aware that this is a threat, and probably the biggest threat to bighorn sheep in North America is the transmission of domestic disease. And what the thinking is there, like our sheep are Siberian immigrants, like they came over interglacial. They came early, like a lot of the elk and the moose, they came later after the last glaciation, but the sheep were earlier, but they're all Siberian immigrants. And then the thinking is that they lost a lot of pathogens and parasites coming over through the cold. And so now when you introduce sheep from the New World to their Old World cousins, the diseases and pathogens from the Old World cousins find an animal that they can evade that has no resistance. So that's the unfortunate, similar with First Nations and Europeans. Very, very similar.
Yeah, and llamas, concern there as well, that a llama could infect a sheep.
Yeah, that's not really clear yet. They're still working on that. Like, it's not. There is a concern that they could be carrying bacteriums that would infect a sheep.
Yeah, that's I remember going into, I think it was this summer, down into Whitehorse Wildland there, and there's a big sign when you're going in, say don't bring your domestic sheep out there. So when they're you said they 350 sheep taken out then. So how is the population looking at the mines now? They healthy and good and everything?
Oh, yeah, they went up fast, and then because they are not exposed to domestic diseases.
Yeah.
When they stop reclaiming, there's going to be a limit, right?
Yeah.
So the prediction was that they're going to maybe overshoot that a bit and then come down and then settle at a lower number, except for when they hit the peak. And it's really interesting if you follow the population growth. With the amount of reclamation, it's just lockstep. Reclamation goes up, sheep go up.
Yeah.
Reclamation, some years they wouldn't be that much. It'd be sort of not a whole lot for 2-3 years. Population stabilizes. It's just like right lockstep with it.
Yeah.
But when it hit, they finish, there's still some to go. But at one point they moved off to the Cheviot mine down south. So,
okay.
When they finished the Greg River and most of the Lascar, the sheep sort of hit that limit. But at that point, a whole lot of things happened. If you're a hunter, you probably know about 2011. It was one of the worst winters, really, spring. They don't die in the winter, it's in the spring. It was extended for 3 weeks, the winter. And I remember they're all waiting for that new green grass. So there was 3 more weeks of winter into April.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just here. It was like out in the prairies and stuff. There was an awful lot of deer dying and everything because winter just stayed too long. And that's what happened. So we lost a lot of big old rams. They just couldn't make it. And it was one of the worst reproductive years for the number of lambs. Like the ewes just either resorbed the fetus or had light born. They died of hypothermia or whatever. They just never made it.
Wow.
And there was a number of factors. Our elk finally came on. The regional populations were quite low for a while, and then Fish and Wildlife made some changes in the populations. There was elk habitat there for years before there was enough elk to find it. So finally they did, and slowly have been building up. But with the elk, like it was always bighorn sheep and mule deer, and with the elk, the third ungulate. I can talk about this forever, so whenever you want to stop me, just do it. But when the third ungulate came, the elk. The grizzlies and the wolves were always sort of there, but when that third ungulate came, we started to have systematic hunting by wolves, and the grizzlies would come. They'd come in June for the elk calves, and that once they learn that, they can get one every other day. It's just fortunate because they don't want all those elk to go exponential. So in a way, it's becoming like a classic predator-prey dynamic right now. So
does it seem like it's evened out then? Like the wolves are kind of taking care of the population, keeping it at a reasonable level, or?
They were eating everything.
Yeah.
It was just outrageous. Like unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, and it's not just wolves, it's mountain lions there too, right? I've seen them hunt down sheep on that area. So yeah, it's a smorgasbord for those large predators.
Yeah, you made habitat, the ungulates come, the predators come. And so when you hit that peak and it stabilized, and then we had a couple of bad winters, and we were still taking sheep for transplanting out, even though you could see that coming down, you could see the population come down. But that often is what happens is it comes down in a hurry. And the carnivores were used to a much more robust population, so they just descended on the rest and just pushed it down.
Okay.
Although, like, down is like still 500 sheep, like we're still
Right.
600 sheep. So now, and then the wolves were denning right on the Greg River mine. They were having 6 pups a year, and that was up to 14 at one point.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And
you're
that's
treating-
a lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Because you're keeping track of wolves
Oh,
out
yeah.
there too and everything. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So, but I think the trappers around the mine got fairly aggressive and pushed the wolves down, and they hadn't den on the mine for about 4 years, and then that gave the ungulates a bit of a reprieve, and they've started. They're on the way up again now, so it's becoming a classic predator-prey dynamic, where you do have increasing ungulates. Here come the carnivores, and then away you go.
Well, wolves are pretty smart. They must know pretty much where that dividing line is, where they're safe and where they're not safe, eh?
Yeah, wolves are they're amazing. Actually, we the one year we knew where the pups were, like we knew where their rendezvous was and everything, and we'd found it in July, and then in our September survey, my technician was walking on top of one of the high walls looking down in the valley where the wolves were, and across is what's called a footwall, which is a smoother wall where the coal was. And here was an adult wolf with 6 pups, now fairly large, this is September, teaching the pups how to climb that footwall.
Oh, wow.
It's just, they can't run across it like the sheep can, but they would go up the cracks, and they were just like, and my technician videoed the whole thing, right from the whole thing, and they were just looking ridiculous. They would fall back and scrabble and everything, and finally the adult ran to the top and waited, and they all made it. It was unreal. So if you were a ram bedded down chewing your cud at the top of the wall, and as a wolf comes up.
Yeah,
but
I've been practicing.
At the same time, I was on another part of the mine, surveying another part of the mine, and witnessing that very same thing with just one wolf. It was a footwall, and this black wolf comes out on the wall and goes up, and there's all these big rams standing grazing there, and they just look at it. It's like, whatever, because it's one wolf. But the first thing that happened was 3 ewes took 20 lambs and just took them right off that footwall over to the high wall, which was really the escape train, hard for the carnivores to negotiate. It was shocking, actually. So they're smart. And they're observation learners. Like, they're not dogs. It's like, man, yeah.
So you guys got multiple cameras set up, just running all the time there?
Depending where we do have cameras in different locations. Yeah.
Be quite the job. I like that. Like you've built such a connection then, because I'm assuming like each year then you'll see this like wolf grow up and like, oh, this was the little one from last year.
It's harder. Not quite like that. No.
You don't show up and the sheep come over and recognize you and say, oh, it's Beth.
No, we always keep our distance. All these years I've never ever, even though I could have, never touched one once.
Yeah.
Well, except in the captures, but then they're not very happy in the captures.
Right.
But no, you want to keep they're social animals.
Yeah.
And you do not want to be accepted into their society, because then you're part of, and biologists have done that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you're subject to their rules, so they have to figure out where you are in their hierarchy of dominance. So you will be challenged, and you certainly don't want to be challenged by, a 250-pound ram with a 25-pound headgear on.
Yeah.
It amazes me that there's not more stories of rams attacking people. I have seen footage of them ramming vehicles.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen a lot of them actually attacking people. In fact, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think mountain goats have been more known to do that with people, and certainly domestic dogs use their dagger-like horns and impale them, right?
Yeah, mountain goats they're interesting. They are semi-territorial. There are only most of our ungulates, like our sheep, are social animals. Elk are social, but they're not territorial where they'll stake out a piece of ground and say and defend it from others of their species. Except for the goat, the nanny in the winter has a mobile territory around herself and her kid because of the forage is so limited. So she has to defend it even against the billies. That's why she's almost as big as him and kind of looks like him. And those horns are designed as daggers. Like if you were designed a dagger, that would be it. And they're meant to cut and slash. And they do. And of course, it's dangerous for them to get cut too. So they're always hitting at the hindquarters, like the skin on their butts is about an inch thick, for that. So,
well, it's interesting you should say that, because I know from studying archaeology, some indigenous tribes would use the hide of the mountain goat for shields and body armor in battles, specifically because it was that thick. Because they have to contend with those daggers, right?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Is there a mountain goat population on the mine?
No, it's not. It's not their habitat.
Okay.
No, they're more the higher walls, and no, that's not. There's some goats, I think, right at the headwaters of Whitehorse Creek. There's a small population there.
Okay.
But that would be about the close. Occasionally, we'll see a goat walking through, but they don't stay. It's not their habitat. Yeah, so, the goats are interesting. But you were talking, Scott, about sheep not attacking humans. We don't think of it, but a striding human is pretty aggressive in the animal world. Like we're on 2 feet and we're walking with purpose mostly.
Yeah.
And that's a fairly aggressive, and we're primates, so I'm looking at you when I'm talking. But that's aggression in a sheep society, unless you're a dominant to subordinate or the ewe and the lamb. So we don't think of it, but a striding human is just the matter of fact. We're walking on 2 feet is kind of aggressive.
6 feet tall, we must look pretty imposing to most critters. Yeah. So, but you're not part of there's no reason for them to challenge you. You're not part of their society. You're kind of outside that, unless you put yourself into it on purpose. But and occasionally, like early on, like biologists have done that, where they've there was actually with goats. He actually wrote a book. Goat biologist, I think, in Montana, and he had been studying goats and sort of didn't realize that he was accepted and being challenged by them, and he got a horn right through his knee, actually. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, he was lucky. It was probably meant for a spleen, but
I'll slow you down.
But he didn't recognize the behaviors. Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about the Whiskey Jack Club, Beth, and we also have we should get into this too. Each week we have our podcast question of the week. So we sent this one out. What is your favorite outdoor winter activity? Scott, you sent in your favorite.
Yeah.
Hot tenting.
Hot tenting. Because it's cozy and it's warm. I mean, I love lots of winter activities. Skiing, skating, sledding, you name it, snowshoeing. But there's something great about winter camping, and you can climb in. Your stuff's all wet. You're cold.
Yeah.
And you can put that fire in the stove and dry out and... crack a beer, fry your bacon on the stove, and it's paradise.
Cozy.
Like, you can get that tent up to 30 degrees, no problem.
Yeah, it was like minus 40 out this morning. That tent be
you
cozy.
You could be toasty warm in there. So, yeah, it's wonderful. And I think I'm enjoying winter camping now more than summer camping, Yeah. There's no bugs. Generally no bears. Unless the odd one wakes up.
I hear what you're saying about the winter camping. The thing for me is just like the darkness. It's dark at 5, which sucks.
Yeah, for sure. But that's where the fire comes in. I think how many hundreds of years as humans we've sat around and stared into the fire in the darkness. There's something magical about it. And most of these stoves have a little Pyrex window, so you get that flicker of the firelight, and it's really quite a cozy thing.
Monty wrote in saying riding horses on the winter range and checking horses. Trent said cross-country skiing. Hinton Nordic Center is great. Tara said hiking. She only puts on snowshoes when she needs to. Renee said snowshoeing. Another Beth, she said, I love a good cross-country ski. Winter bonfires out in the bush with the kids is also the best. My mom wrote in, she said snowshoeing is her favorite winter activity. So thanks everyone that sent these in. Beth, what's your favorite thing to do in the winter?
I like, skiing and
Cross-country skiing?
Yeah. And snowshoeing.
Yeah.
We do that for work, for snow tracks. Yeah.
Yeah, because are you tracking like all winter? You're following the Bighorn herd and stuff too, then? Or
we do winter count. We do more in a summer count and then multiple counts in the fall. That's when we do our population estimates. Okay. But we do, depending what job we're doing, we'll be doing track counts for winter ungulate and carnivore use. Yeah. So that's always nice, actually.
Yeah.
It is, actually.
Good excuse to get out there.
Yeah.
We also, Scott, we had talked about this on our Scotch drinking episode. We got into would you rather questions.
It was a very creative episode.
Yes. And we're thinking this could be like a regular segment on the podcast, which would be kind of like wilderness would you rather questions. So I thought of one last night. I wrote it down. You got one too? One or two?
Oh, yeah. I've got a couple good ones. Yeah, okay. But you go ahead there.
Okay.
What do you got?
This is would you rather. This one's a little bit out there, but so would you rather have 2 whiskey jacks that live in your house, like just free range in there, or have a grouse surprise you twice a day? So like wherever you're walking, when you're like walking in the bush, oh, there's a grouse right there that flops out. Yeah. That happens to you 2 times a day.
Oh, that's an easy one for me. I'd pick the grouse, and the reason is we took in a wounded blue jay, and had it in our house for a few weeks, and this thing was the loudest, most annoying thing, and it knew that every time we walked by, especially my wife, that it would get food, so it was squawking nonstop, and I think whiskey jacks would be similarly ornery. Yeah. How about you?
What do you think, Beth?
That being surprised by grouse is pretty crazy. I've done that in winter with sharp-tailed grouse, like right out from the snow, right in front of you.
Heart attack.
Heart attack time. Yeah.
So I think that's going to happen to you twice a day, then, Scott.
Yeah, I think I'll get numb to it.
Okay.
I'll bring my throwing stick and bring fresh grouse home every evening.
But I could see how a whiskey jack, because they'll probably land on your head and do all kinds of stuff.
They'll poop all over the place. And,
they'll be all over the place. Yeah.
Canada's national bird, whiskey jack. Or bird is national.
It is Canada's
national bird. What is the story behind the Whiskey Jack Club, Beth?
That started way back when. Actually, I might as well do the whole story. This was years ago, and the Rotary Club of Hinton asked me to talk about wildlife at their Wednesday luncheon meeting, and I go, oh my goodness, what a wildlife. And that's all, they gave me wildlife. Yeah. And I thought, a bunch of businessmen, what do I talk about? So I thought, I'll talk about, the town had put in the town trails, and they had done a really nice job of them. And so I talked about birding as being an activity that was increasing in popularity, and even challenging golf in some areas. And a bird list would be nice for the Maxwell Lake area that would enhance people's enjoyment of the walks. And the Rotary Club said, we like that idea, go get a committee and come back. And I said, oh, okay. And I knew that Rick Bonner from West Fraser, he was the biologist there, had been talking about a beaver boardwalk around there. Yeah. So I asked Rick, and I asked Scott, who worked for the town recreation manager at the time, and then the Rotarian and myself, and we met at the Old Grind in Hinton. And Rick Bonner came with a fully fully completed, realized proposal for a beaver boardwalk with pictures, budgets, you name it. And we kind of, four of us sat around and said, let's do that.
Well,
And
I think we had some whiskey too. and that's where the Whiskey Jack name came from. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then, I made the Whiskey Jack Club to develop the bird list to go along with the Beaver Boardwalk. But
Wow.
the Beaver Boardwalk kind of took front and center, and Rick Bonner and I think West Fraser donated the wood for the first year.
And the town put all the pilings in.
Right.
Yeah, we had to go to council for that. So that's all history.
Yeah, and you helped. I remember you helped with, what we had to do in terms of all of the committees and council, like all of the steps that
all
we
the
had.
Politics, yeah.
Okay, politics.
Whiskey
Yay.
Jack Club still active.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is.
Awesome.
We do butterfly counts with Scott. We do Wednesday evening bird walks on the boardwalk. We do Christmas bird counts.
Guest speakers, yeah.
Guest speakers, yeah.
Done some amphibian counts as well for salamanders and things like that.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was great because I moved to this area 20 years ago, and I remember thinking, where's the Naturalist Club? And I looked, and there wasn't one.
Yeah.
And I thought, how can that be? We're here in the Northern Rockies. This is a paradise. So when I connected with Beth, it was like, yeah, this has to happen.
Yeah.
We need this for the community.
wjclub at telus.net. You want to get a hold of the Whiskey Jack Club. That's cool. I like that. I didn't realize that was like part of the Beaver Boardwalk and going and everything too. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Scott, you got a Would You Rather for us?
Yeah, I've got one. And we've batted this one around, but because Beth is here, we have a professional biologist in our midst. You mentioned about the surprise encounter with the grizzly, but I think we pitched this one last time. Would you rather have a surprise encounter with a grizzly or a surprise encounter with a mountain lion? So you were roughly 9-10 yards. You have a choice to do one of those again. What are you choosing?
I'd choose the grizzly.
Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked out good last time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, that's a hard one because the cougars, the cats are they fixate on you, eh? And there's no there's no behavioral, like with the grizzly. You have a chance that you're like what I was doing was telling him what I was, and I wasn't a threat.
Yeah.
Like by you have that, not always, but that is a potential, is that your behavior can affect the behavior of that bear, where I'm not so sure, a cat just gets fixated and it's going to come. And so you've got to be aggressive and loud and look big and never turn away and even fight the thing if you have to. So, and they're big, powerful. Like I know, everybody, wants to go to Africa to see lions and stuff. I said, well, we have lions.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, and they're powerful animals. They're just all muscle. They're amazing, actually. I've only seen glimpses of them, like usually across the road or something. But
yeah, they're the size of a leopard. They can, in fact, on average, be larger than the African leopard, which people are shocked at.
Crazy.
If I said there's leopards in the forest, people would be like, "No way!" Well, we've got a cat just as big and powerful here. Yeah. Can I ask one more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Scott, before you get into that, while we're on cougars, is there enough information we could do a episode on cougars?
Oh, absolutely. It'd be great to bring
put that
some
in the
experts in the
Rolodex.
room. Maybe bring Beth back and others who've had encounters. I know a fellow who's, I think, had 2 close encounters. But yeah, it's a great subject. They're very, very interesting.
I'll put it on our episode list. Listen for that in the near future, because if you listen back, I want to say episode 7, maybe 10, but scroll back in there. We did an episode about bears and bear myths, and then we also had Morris on too.
Yeah.
With the bear attack. So interesting episodes.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your next one?
Well, I ate a cougar, right? You know that.
You ate a cougar? Yeah, we'll talk about ways to cook up cougars too. Perfect.
Yeah. I've got a biologist question. A dream. As a biologist, would you rather be able to discover a new species of bird and have that claim to fame, or a new species of butterfly? Because I know both are close to your heart.
That's a good one.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Oh boy. It's going to have to be a bird, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little more substantial.
Well, yeah. And that's really just not fair.
That'll keep you awake tonight.
Yeah.
Because the new butterflies they're so wonderful. Like, they're amazing. Like, I can never really get over them, that, there's these small little things, and, how do they flit here and there, and they're so hard to catch, and they're just floating around in the air, and yet there they are.
Little bits of magic, right? It's quite something.
So what are you guys doing with these butterfly counts? What's that about?
Okay. We do. Let me get my head into butterflies. And I haven't talked about harlequin ducks yet, but we'll leave that one for another time. Their counts. They're done like all across Alberta.
Yeah.
And they're done in the same circles of the Christmas bird counts are. And we do, I'm trying to think, we do summarize them and put them on eButterfly now. That's right.
Yeah, eButterfly.
Yeah.
It's a database.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a database. And it's not just like we do Whitehorse Wildland Park, which involves in the morning we're down on Whitehorse Creek, and the afternoon we go up to the Divide. So it's two different places with potentially different butterflies.
Yeah.
But there are a number of them that are done throughout Alberta at the same time, in the proper season. So it's part of citizen science, sort of tracking butterflies.
Cool.
It is. We've done it for years.
And every year is a little bit different. You'd think it would always be the same, but it isn't. What's amazing, it's like opening Christmas presents. You never quite know what you're going to get. Sometimes there's a whole burst of different species that you didn't see before, or different trends. And one year we had monarchs that showed up, which was very rare. And so it's just a snapshot of what's going on in nature. And they're really quite magical. Yeah, I thought, I'm too tough to get into butterflies, but man, I'm mesmerized by them.
Yeah.
And it's funny watching dads at butterfly counts, because they hold back initially. Kind of the kids are up front and the moms, and by the end the dads are like, let's keep going. And they're chasing these things down. They get right into it. And we've met people who are so butterfly obsessed, they'll rent horses to go into places to catch butterflies. They're doing their vacations around butterflies. Like, it can become an obsession. So tread carefully.
Yeah. We were in the Calgary Zoo this summer. Yeah, it was this summer. They were talking. There's like a butterfly exhibit in there, which is pretty cool. Like, there's just thousands in there, and they're just amazing. You ever cook one of them up? Eat them? Is that something?
No, butterflies. Well, see, in nature, a lot of colorful stuff is a warning that they're toxic. So a lot of butterflies do have toxins in them. So I've eaten tons of bugs, you know that from survival trips, but you want to go with the bland looking, boring looking stuff. If anything's bright, the same with fish, tropical fish, that's usually a sign, don't eat me, you're going to regret it. Frogs, same thing. Colorful frogs, poison arrow frogs, there's fire belly toads and that. So they'll warn you. They'll actually, some of these critters will show their colors off and be like, are you sure you want to eat me? Because you're not going to like it. Yeah. That
leads into, we have a Ask Scott question I wanted to get in before we wind this down. But this one was from Kevin. It said, Ask Scott, I'm curious, with your foraging and always looking for wild foods, what is your favorite fast food? Do you eat fast food, or is that off the limits?
Oh, yeah. My favorite fast food, it depends what hankering I get. Is Edo Japan fast food? Because I had that tonight. I had a
Yeah, I guess
craving.
It sounds healthy. I think Edo Japan might be too healthy.
It's
for
too
Beth.
healthy.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just need a McDonald's cheeseburger. I'm not craving anything fancy, just the cheeseburger.
Yeah.
And if I have to do a big public presentation, afterwards I'm always hungry for KFC. Some good crispy Kentucky Fried Chicken. And then I usually regret it like a half hour later. But so, yeah.
Beth, you got a favorite fast food?
Yeah, I'll do a McDonald's chicken burger.
Yeah.
Just a plain chicken burger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's your answer, Kevin. Thanks for sending that in. If you want to send in a Scott or a question for Ask Scott, send it to wildernesswave@outlook.com, and we'll add it to the next episode. So, Beth, if someone wants to get in, like a young listener wants to become a biologist, get into your field, what's the best move? What's the steps to start doing that?
Yeah, just follow your interests. If you're interested in the outdoors or interested in whether it's fishing or hiking or birding, join a naturalist club. Just get out there and go to college or university, get some training. Your summer jobs are pretty important too.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different organizations that hire summer jobs, and some of them might just be slogging, checking cameras or, doing the grunt work, but that's good too.
Yeah.
As long as it gets you out there, and then just stay involved, I think.
As a wildlife biologist, like how long of schooling are like people necessarily going for? Like, is it a few years or can it be as long as you want, or?
It can be, if you want to be a biologist, you would need a bachelor's of science, like a minimum, and you may want to go and do a master's as well, as depending where you go at that point. If you want to go into research, for sure, then you do post-secondary, like master's or more. If you want to be, a biologist, then I think a bachelor's 4-year would be a minimum.
Yeah. Cool. If people want to get a hold of Beth, wjclub@telus.net. Beth, we're gonna have you back. I mean, I've still got a list of stuff we haven't talked about, but we'll do a cougar episode, Scott. I think that would be a fun one. We should do a butterfly episode too. That could be good. And I want to do a birding episode. Jeff, who was previous guest on the podcast, big birder, would be interested. His favorite bird is the whiskey jack, so fit right in with you.
We've got some really good birders in town, and Beth is one of them. But we could definitely
do an episode dedicated to birds. Beth, do you have a favorite bird?
I'll just have to say harlequin duck.
Yeah, what do you love about the harlequin duck?
Oh, I've studied them for and I mean really studied these ones for years and years. I'm actually doing one of 3 long-running monitoring programs in the breeding streams in Western North America.
Oh wow!
And so that's one of the. I'm one of them. Like, I'm looking at one of these breeding populations. Okay, I'll tell you what my bucket list is as a biologist. Okay, there's 4 duck species in the world that have evolved independently. They're not related for living in swift-flowing mountain streams. So these 4 species are all independently evolved. One is the harlequin duck, of course. One is the torrent duck in South America. This thing is gorgeous. One is the blue duck in New Zealand, and the other is the Salvadorese teal in Papua New Guinea. So, so far I've seen the harlequin duck.
Yeah.
So
the harlequin duck's beautiful too. Maybe there's something about mountain streams that brings out these incredibly beautiful critters there. If you've never seen one as a listener, look it up. They're just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stunning.
Your plan would be to go to these, go to New Zealand, see the blue duck then? Is that...
Yeah. I might make New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah. The blue
amazing.
duck. Yeah. They're amazing. They're the same kind of habitats, like headwater, shallow streams.
Yeah.
Like the harlequin is a diving duck, but It's depth limited. It walks well on land. It's not built like a loon, like an efficient diving duck. It's built more like a prairie duck. It walks well, upright. So it's depth limited. So they're either on the coast where they winter, they're near shore birds on rocky shores, and so they're headwaters and shallower waters. You won't find them lower down in deeper water. So they're I better not talk about them too much because I could go on forever. But they migrate east-west too. That's super different.
The males are a bit of jerks. They leave a brood and leave the female to do all the rearing, and they go back to the Pacific coast and leave the female with all the hard work.
Are the males the good-looking ones though?
The males are the super good-looking ones.
Right.
Yeah. But they come and they do their job. But as soon as the female's incubating, they start back to the coast.
They're like, see you later.
Wow.
Yeah, my job here is done.
Yeah.
But then
save the day.
The females that lose their brood or don't have a brood, they'll overlap with the hatching, and then they're off to the coast toward the end of July. They're gone to the coast. So toward the end of the summer, it's just the females with broods that are left. And these poor little things, I always think, and there's no flight. These birds, there's no glide to them. It's just power. These things are power. And literally they will fly like a meter off the water, and they're always on the water.
Yeah.
So if we're surveying harlequins, you got to have your eyes just glued on that water the whole time, because you could just be looking at your brood and they're gone.
Yeah.
They go by you. So
is there a pretty decent population?
Pardon?
Is there like a good population around here then?
There's several. The Wilmore's got a number of really. There's a lot of perfect streams in the Wilmore for the harlequins, but you're being a little harsh, Scott. I think let's do the biology thing. It's likely resource partitioning. So,
there you go. You're giving the males a pass. I like that.
Resource partitioning.
Yeah.
Just remember that when you're a jerk, George.
Right. I'm resource partitioning.
Well, probably not you. Yeah, so these are inherently low productivity streams, being high cold water, and so they remove themselves from competing with the young. And so the females that lose their brood or don't have overlap is a learning thing of where the females with their broods, where the brood rearing stretches are, and then they're out of there too, so they're not competing. And these poor little ducks, where there's no glide to them. So toward the end of the summer, Mom says, okay, it's time we got to the coast and did our molt, because they delay their molt till they get to the coast. So in 2 days, they're up and they fly and they're on the coast in 2 days from here.
Wow.
And it's just like crazy.
Like it's
just straight,
all or nothing, straight across.
They're one stop, because we've had satellite telemetry on them, actually, and most of them is 2 days, like one stop, like you're just flying, one stop, flying, and you're on the coast. Some people don't drive.
I was going to say, it takes 3 days to get to the coast driving. Wow.
So it's just, we call them our little cruise missiles. Like,
Amazing.
Okay, we got to do an episode. We'll do a birding episode, because I think we haven't done anything like that yet, so the demands for one. Thanks for coming on, Beth. It was great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. I really enjoyed it.
We just love having passionate people on, and you're clearly passionate about what you do, and it's great to see. wjclub@telus.net. You want to get a hold of Beth and the Whiskey Jack Club. Scott, Northern Rockies Bushcraft on Instagram. Follow along with Scott. You got a camping trip lined up in the future here?
Well, I'm wondering if I'm getting soft, because it's been minus 35, and I could have gone out last weekend and I didn't, and I thought, I could, but I'd like it to be a bit warmer. But yeah, I'm itching to get out. I've got cabin fever. I need to catch some fish and head into the mountains.
Okay. We'll be following along with you on that one. Thanks everyone that's listening, and the reviews coming in is great. If you want to get a hold of us, wildernesswave@outlook.com. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Wilderness Wavelength.